Hey everyone, welcome back to the Focus on Your Own Family podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is one that's going to stay with you because I'm joined once again by the incomparable Lindsey Williams. This is her third time, I think, maybe fourth, on the show. And honestly, every conversation I have with her is like opening a window and letting the fresh truth come in. You may recognize Lindsay from the Shiny Happy People documentary, where she courageously shared her story as a survivor of Bill Gothard's IBLP. But that's just one part of who she is. Lindsay is already an accomplished hair and makeup artist, with a portfolio that spans prestige cosmetic companies, celebrities, and editorial work that is both creative and transformative. She is a dear friend, a truth teller, and someone who brings beauty and clarity into every space that she enters. Today, we are diving into something that's both deeply personal and a little experimental. I recently took years' worth of my old prayer journals, decades of them really, and uploaded them into AI. Then I asked for an analysis around religious trauma and CPTSD. What came back? Well, honestly, it floored me. The patterns, the spiritual grooming, the dissociation. So, Lindsay and I are unpacking it all. The implications, the triggers, the healings, and what it means to reclaim your story from systems that tried to erase it. And if you've noticed, I've been a little quiet lately. That's why. I've been deep in the weeds preparing my book for submission, finally. And I've been writing consistently on Substack, which has quickly become the creative home I didn't know I needed. Writing there helps me process, evolve, and connect in a deeper way with this community and the message that I feel I'm called to share. Also, a quick update. I'll be closing my Patreon and migrating everything over to Substack. If you're a supporter there, thank you. You can now choose between a monthly or yearly paid subscription or stay on the free tier if that's what works for you. I'll be putting most of my energy into that space moving forward. Links are in the show note and in my bio. And I'm going to be coming back with more podcast content. I do miss this space, but I did need to take that break. And I know that it wasn't announced. I get that. Believe me, I get that. But sometimes life doesn't announce itself, right? Like sometimes you just need to take that break. And I'm glad that I did. It helped me continue mending the parts of my world that need to be mended. It helped me be present as a parent and as a partner. And it helped me to become a better creator and become a better writer. So here we are. Thank you for being here. Thank you again for supporting this work. And now settle in for a powerful conversation with, once again, the incomparable Lindsey Williams. Welcome, Lindsay. It's so good to see you. I was talking with Sean this morning and he's like, oh, are you really excited to talk to Lindsay? He's like, I know you talk to her almost every day, but this time you're recording your conversations.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I feel like we need to censor so much of what we do talk about.
Maybe.
Welcome back. And
Thanks.
It's been a long time since I've had you on here, but it's also been a long time since I've even recorded an episode. So much has been going on in my life, and I know so much in your life. And I know that it would be fun to do an entire episode where we want to catch up, but I had this wild idea that I would take some of my journals, because we both know, like, should probably explain. Do you want to explain what prayer journals are to everybody?
I mean, I can. I think you actually probably activated more of a prayer journal than I ever did. With the way that I was raised with fundamentalism and you with Evangelical, like you were supposed to like write down your prayers and write down your prayer requests, how the Lord would answer them, or they were your kind of cries out to God. I feel like, especially for all of us kids in our trauma space, we really were just like please, Lord Jesus, fix this or help us with this, and what can we do to become closer to you? And we would, Abba Father it and Lord God, King of the universe, come down. So it was like an adoration thing too. We would just like adore him in these prayer journals too. I didn't really do prayer journals. I did more just kind of like journaling, but with the awareness that more than likely some authority, mainly your parents, are going to end up reading these at some point or ask permission to read them, or just, walk in your room and grab the book and go and read it on their own, and then berate you for maybe not being godly enough or saying things about your feelings that maybe were not in check with God. So I had a hard time with feeling like I could ever feel vulnerable enough to really put down how I really felt in a prayer journal or journal/diary. For those of you who are not really familiar with prayer journals, it really was just the Christian way to put your wants, hopes, needs, and desires onto paper.
Yeah. For me, so that was just to, if y'all aren't familiar with who Lindsey Williams is, she was in Shiny Happy People #1, as they're coming out with a Shiny Happy People #2. We're not even going to go into that, because we're not making this like a 10-part series. She is a survivor of the IBLP, Bill Gothard. I have her a couple times on the podcast as a guest, and she goes into depth on that. But if you haven't seen Shiny Happy People, it's on Amazon. It's streaming on Prime. Go check it out, and you'll know so much more of Lindsay's background. I come from the focus on your own family, which is accurate. Like, that's what this is. But focus on the family. James Dobson. And I had some IBLP influence, but mine was primarily fundamentalist Dobson. With that, one of the things that happened with Dobson is room rates. And I also know that it did happen with the IBLP with Gothard, because my childhood best friend, she was raised more in that system, and that happened frequently in her world as well. And my parents started doing that in my teen years, early adolescent, mid-teen years, where they felt like privacy was something you earned. You had to perform for it. So they would go into my room and they would dig through things, rifle through things. Usually the way that it went is my mom would take me out, whether we were going grocery shopping or getting lunch. And while that was going on, my dad was completely ransacking my room, and he would take my journals, my notes, everything, and sprawl them out on their bed. And then I would have to come in and essentially answer for what they felt was evil, what they felt was pulling me away from God. And I would have to give an account for that. And they thought that they were holding me accountable for my actions that were tearing me away from Jesus, when in reality, I was just being a normal teenager and wanting autonomy. So with that,
it's such a huge betrayal of trust.
Yes.
And your own autonomy of, I'm becoming something. I'm becoming an individual, a person with thoughts, feelings, hopes, and dreams. And then they're barreling in, usually on emotion, let's be honest. Like, our parents didn't do this because they were so worried about our spirituality. They were probably having a weird day, or they were feeling, prompted by the Holy Spirit, as they would hide behind the guise of, to like go in and be like, well, it seems suspicious. She's being a little resistant right now. So let's go and just turn the tables in her bedroom and get whatever we can out. And then, just let's just accuse her of everything and put her on the spot and shame her. I had that happen often. We didn't call them room raids, but yeah, it would be similar. Like, or you would have to fess up certain things like, oh, I have this toy that someone gave me, and so now I have to go and burn it in the backyard or whatever it would be because, I allowed Satan to enter the home, and that's why maybe X, Y, and Z had been happening to our family. Because now it's my fault because I opened Satan's portal to zoom into our house and ruin it. And it was like, maybe it was just like your relationship problems that was ruining the house.
Yep. And it caused me to, for somebody who once had a journal, I then shifted to what youth group was talking about, which was keeping a prayer journal, because diaries were there for secrets. Prayer journals were there to usher you into the throne room of God, be at the foot of Jesus. And what is interesting is I have prayer journals spanning from 15 years old to 38, 39 years old, between 37 and 39. And I decided the other day that I would write them down, that I would take, so I started with June 27th. As it stands, today is July 1st. And I took all the journal entries from June 27th from whatever I had. So one of them was when I was 18. And then I think the last entry was when I was 29. And I wrote them down, and I kept my grammar. I kept everything the same, which as a writer, that was very challenging for me to do. And I'm going to be honest, my children who are in their adolescence are better writers than I was in those journals. Their vocabulary is better. Their grammar is better. It was very upsetting, and it didn't shift that much. So I'm typing these out. And originally I just thought, okay, I'm going to bring Lindsay on. I'm going to have her on, and I'm just going to read these, and we're going to analyze this. And we'll probably have some laughs, kind of poking fun at where we were. But then I got this idea. What if I put it into AI? And I asked AI to analyze it and pull themes. And I gave it this prompt. I said, female, raised in the evangelical movement, pull themes, analyzing for CPTSD, religious trauma, that sort of thing. And then I pressed enter and I waited. And what came out of that blew my mind. To be able to extract that, I want to say that there's maybe 4 paragraphs of journal entries. This isn't a lot. This is a very small subsect of journals, a very small sample size. I, like I said, was just blown away at what I uncovered, what I was seeing. But then, so I actually ended up calling you, and I was like, Lindsay, you're never going to believe this. And we were going over some things and really loving the way that it was framed. Some of the terms were incredibly healing, I think, for both you and I. And then yesterday, I thought, I'm going to do the same thing. And I had a lot more sample sizes to be able to give. And I said, I went further in the prompt, and I said, I would like you to compare these, to base these off of where a child's development should be. Like how can you define this this girl, her emotional age? And that was where it got serious.
First I have to say, I think this is the most brilliant I've ever heard of in like self-healing to that Chat GPT and AI have gotten to a point where they are pretty valid in how it is articulating and pulling resourced information in order to give some pretty great in-depth feedback. And I'm so curious because I already know a little bit of the previous, which it still was like haunts me, you know, with some of the stuff that we were talking about. Like I've thought about it since our conversation. And now with this, with the age, emotional age and the maturity level, I'm actually I think I got a little anxiety in my stomach just now when you were explaining it. I was like, oh, hell, here we go. Buckle your seatbelts, everybody.
I'm trying to figure out, you could probably see me trying to fiddle with something. I'm dealing with a very small space and a lot of equipment right here. So, okay. First, I'm going to say that I'll pull up what it said for the journal entries. And this is like brand new for you. So
Okay.
you're getting Lindsay's reaction in real time. It says, CPT, you're right, CPTSD and religious trauma themes. 1, earned safety through performance and praise. So it pulls quotes, which I'm really thankful for. Thank you so much for allowing me to have the opportunity to interview. Thank you for, and again, these are over the span, I want to say probably 2002, maybe 2001 to 2015, I think.
Okay.
So we've got a good sample section. And this is June 29th that
and what is your age range for this, like for you?
Right.
20s
18,
to early 30s?
Yeah, 18 to 31.
Okay.
Probably
okay.
31, 32. So thank you so much for allowing me to have the opportunity to interview. I had interviewed for something. Again, I don't even know because I'm not reading the whole thing. Thank you for blessing me with parents, with the parents that I had. So I feel like that needs to be acknowledged because, and this was something that really hit me that was so specific to evangelical kids, that when we were praying, even though we were being abused, even though we were being abandoned in the name of Jesus, the church was left to raise us while our parents were in ministry. It's very similar. Interestingly enough, it's very similar to Scientology, where they just like leave the kids on the Sea Org, a giant ship. Mm-hmm. And they're like, see you later, go save the planet. In this, I found myself journaling in the midst of some of the most painful years of my life because I did not have parents. I'm journaling. Thank you, God, so much for my parents. They're so wonderful. I'm so thankful for them. I'm also very concerned at some points that they need to reconnect. Like, God, give them an opportunity to reconnect. I don't really know where that came from, but I think that stems from Dobsonian ideology and also what was handed to us as older teenagers in the church, right? So you need to make sure that your parents are able to enjoy their marriage. You need to make sure that your parents have an opportunity to reconnect. Don't suck so much life out of them that they can't have an opportunity to be a couple because they're spending so much time focused on you. And so we all of a sudden became caretakers of our parents' marriage when we didn't even need to know anything about it. But
all you needed to know was that you were safe and you were provided for and taken care of.
So I think as I'm reading this, and I think I can see my frame of mind, Lindsay, is that I was hoping that by thanking God profusely for my parents, that it would somehow force God, I say in air quotes, to force my parents to come home. Like maybe they would want me. Maybe they would want to come back. Maybe they would see that I am just as important as God or as my other siblings. Maybe they would see that. And I just, like in here, I come boldly before the throne. Ugh.
Your prayer, like to me in deconstruction and stuff, I've gotten to a point where prayer was my emotion of hope, my feeling of hope.
Yes.
I just hope something could change. And the only way I'm allowed to, quote, hope and not feel useless is to pray, because Christians don't believe in actual action. They believe that their action is praying, because a higher power, well, that magical power is going to fix everything. And so if when you're a kid and you're praying and praying and praying and supplicating and just like crying out to God, you really are that's just the basic human nature of hoping that something can change, because it is outside of your scope of capacity to fix it.
Right. And it says in here, across nearly every entry, she attempts to secure safety and belonging by performing gratitude, humility, and obedience. Even while recounting deep personal pain or abandonment, this is a spiritual fawning response. She believes that if she is good enough, God will return what she has lost. CPTSD parallel. Survivors of chronic neglect and abandonment often learn to perform worthiness to avoid further loss. In a religious context, this is spiritualized and reframed as praise. Mm-hmm. It's just, right? So thanks and praise, that's what hallelujah translates into. And you're thanking God and you're praising God, when in reality, you're performing worthiness to avoid further loss.
And the whole point of you even going to him is because you're begging for change.
Mm-hmm. You're desperate for it, but you're not allowed to do this on your own understanding. But in all ways,
acknowledge him.
And he will direct your path. What is that? Proverbs?
Proverbs something or other, and I'm glad I don't remember.
It's like sometimes I default. I'm like, it's either Proverbs or Romans.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, there's some that I really do know that they're not going to go anywhere ever. But
I used to think that too. Give yourself the 25 years down the road of not really entrenching yourself in it, and it actually, I mean, for me, it feels really lovely when I do not remember a scripture reference.
But it's like
yes,
right?
Don't remember.
It's apparently it's hidden in our heart. Well, it's deeply buried there. Then,
girl, I think it eroded out. I think it is just eroded and crumbled and gone to dust and flown away.
Exactly. So the second is suppression and reframing of painful truths. So parents abandoned me. If I was good enough, God would give me parents that loved me. Help me to be a blessing to someone today. Thank you for protecting my daughter. I ask for a great day. There is no room to be angry, to grieve, to say this hurts without immediately reframing it into worship. This reflects religious trauma's tendency to repackage emotional suppression as spiritual maturity. The CPTSD parallel. Chronic minimization of pain is common in survivors who have been taught that expressing negative emotions is dangerous or selfish. Repackaged emotional suppression as spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
That hits.
Sit with that one.
Yep. Because I want to hear
too,
from you.
Like,
yes.
I think my initial thought was like the arrogance of believers many times is astounding.
Yes.
And it just blows your mind. But then they are incapable of having human relationships that do not fall apart because their emotional maturity is just not there, but they have so much conceit and arrogance in their knowledge of Christ and the scriptures. And again, it saves all. Well, does it really? Did it save or help you become an actual better person abiding on this earth? Like, I don't know, that's just the thing that initially hit me was like the lack of maturity but then it's guised as a spiritual maturity, and you're suffering all of this time. And again, the scriptures do push, and all of these fundy and evangelicals push, that suffering is the ultimate way to live through life.
It's synonymous with joy.
Yeah.
Pain is joy. And I know I've discussed this on social media, and I'm pretty sure I've discussed it here on the podcast as well, that the vernacular is not the same in the evangelical movement. You live in the world, but it is not the same world. It's not, I know there's that colloquialism of in the world, but not in the world, but not of it.
Of the world. Yep.
Yeah. However, it's not the same. Like it's kind of this idea of, did you ever see, I don't know, you probably didn't, but there was this Disney movie. I know already you're like, probably not. It's called Alice Through the Looking Glass. And it wasn't animated. This was real actors, actresses. And
this is the more recent one with Wachowski, right?
No, I want to say this was like late 80s, 90s.
Oh,
okay.
Like
we're talking way back. Yeah. And Alice looks at the mirror and she can see everything on the other side. And that is how I feel the evangelical movement is you can see everything out there, but you're not allowed to step into it. If you step into it, it's sinful, and it's sinful to even want to step into it.
Right.
So this parallel world that you live in, now I don't remember where I was going because I just looked at this. It's just,
I think it's a great analogy.
There's colloquialisms. Just that in your world, in the world of the evangelical space, joy equals pain. But in their world, pain equals pain. Joy equals joy. In their world, you're allowed to be happy. In the evangelical world, that's sinful because happiness is an emotion that the flesh has. I hate that word. It sounds like chicken cutlets, but everything was based on your body, soul, mind. And your mind and your body are fallible. Those are terrible, terrible things. But your soul can be eternal. That's the only thing that God can redeem. And so there is a constant battle between your soul wanting to win over your body and mind, rather than acknowledging that they're one and the same. They've decided to separate it and make you consistently at war with these three parts that they believe exists, because everything has to be Trinitarian in nature. So
you're also, with every chart they ever create with soul, body, spirit, however we want to put it, mind, body, mind, soul, spirit. It's containered, it's compartmentalized. It's this. Like the spirit was always the biggest around you, and then your soul or I forget which one it is. I feel like I've seen multiple different charts, but you've always got your body or your mind at the tiniest core. And then all encompassing and surrounding at the outset is your spirit. And then your soul, I think, is in the middle and kind of has a pretty big chunk. And so, it's, as you were talking, I was like, oh, the compartmentalizing and the separation of ourselves to deny a certain feeling, but then spiritually come over here and supplicate for this and ask for this and demand this of God. But then also having these emotions of, I'm so hurt, but sorrow comes at night, but joy comes in the morning. It was like a cause and effect. In order to have happiness or joy, you had to have sorrow, pain, or suffering.
Yes.
In order for this to happen, they're like, well, that's okay because the Lord's going to do this later. Well, there's no timetable on this thing. So let's not go to it, like, get real simple. Like, hi, my body's hurting and I have a problem. Well, that's suffering. So let's completely bypass your physical feelings and your emotions about this and just like, let's just sacrifice that up to God, because at some point, well, God will fix it, or he'll bring something around that will help you to become better. But by all means, don't seek it out. Like there's just this abandonment of your own capacity to listen to yourself, whether it is your body or your mind or the soul within you, or like what I've learned now over the past maybe 10 years is my freaking intuition. Yes. And my God, is my intuition strong. I mean, it freaks me out now how in tune I can be with people just by someone walking in a room. I instantly, it's not so much the judging a book by its cover, but I feel the energy of that person. I see their eyes. I feel their intent of who they are. And I can be like, I love you to death. You are my new best friend, or I'm staying the heck away from you. And sometimes I can't even explain the why. But when we're children and younger people, and even older too, but I think when you're younger and you're impressionable and this is what your parents are pushing on you, and then the church is continuing to hammer at home, you are segregating so many parts of yourself and denying the parts that need to mature. And that's where we get these really sad prayer books and journals like we have, because we had nowhere to put what we were denying of ourselves, and those things that were left completely unmatured. I'm still really curious. I cannot wait for you to get to like what your like maturity age was, because I think
that was
it's gonna blow my mind.
Yeah. So 3, hypervigilance and control masked as prayer. Help me choose wise eating habits. Increase. Essentially, I'm saying here, please heal my body, heal me physically and mentally. And then make motherhood easier to love. The prayers often resemble internal panic and obsessive fixations more than communion with God. There's a clear effort to control outcomes: body, food, spouse, child behavior, disguised as surrender. This isn't faith, it's trauma-fueled hypervigilance. The CPTSD parallel. This is a trauma response to environments where unpredictability felt dangerous. Controlling others becomes a form of safety seeking. And how do we control others? Through prayer. It was the easiest way.
Passive-aggressive.
Yes.
Through passive-aggressive Christian vernacular. That's how we do it.
It's codependency at its absolute finest, right? So you see somebody that you need to change and you walk in and you try to control them. And that's
with a
how
strange
you're dependent.
smile, a really weird voice, and passive aggressively telling them that you'll pray for them because you can tell they're struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They're struggling.
Yeah.
It's like cock my head to the...
Right. I know. It really is, isn't it?
We're
like,
what is it about
because if my head is
they can't it can't be straight. It has to be sideways. It's so
There's
weird.
a reason for it. Because if you're straight, you are confident, you are bold, you are very sure of yourself, and in submission culture and surrendering to people and being seen as non-threatening, I think we tend to cock our heads a little bit. Like, hey, look, we're not a threat.
Yeah. The other thing, of course, is the woman looking at her husband. Just this, it's
the doe eyes.
Disturbing. I don't believe I have one photo of me doing that to Sean. I don't think so. You have a few of you doing that to Sean?
Oh, no, not to Sean. Oh, good Lord, no.
I mean, whatever.
Secret's out.
He's going to listen to this and be like, why did she have to say anything? Okay, this is where the word that you love. 4, enmeshment and loss of identity. I pray I have a right heart. I give our debt and savings to you. Fix my attitude. Fix my husband's attitude. help me love motherhood. So it keeps like kind of pulling back to that. But also, this is during a decade where I was being a mom. I mean, I'm still a mom, but I was in the
newbie mom stage.
Yeah, where I had 3 children under 5, I think.
Okay.
Rather than expressing her own thoughts, limits, or needs, she folds her identity entirely into a divine script. She is not a self, she is a vessel. This erasure of selfhood is not humility, it's spiritualized dissociation. The CPTSD parallel, survivors of high control systems often lose the ability to define boundaries, desires, or identity outside the demands of that system.
First of all, indoctrination and conditioning works, everyone. It works. And this is why we continue to talk. And this is why we continue to shout this from the rooftops, because you are in these journals absolutely crying out for help. Would I have seen this
100%
20 years ago? No, I probably wouldn't have been like, oh, she's just really, look at how dedicated she is to crying out to God. And you would honor it and respect it. But that's everyone also around you with their lack of emotional maturity. To be able to see like this mom, this woman is struggling. And it's interesting too, because you keep saying, fix this, fix this, fix this. Well, is the guy in the sky going to fix it? Because how many years now have you been crying out and wishing and hoping and praying and trying to be the best little self that you could?
Right.
And yet you weren't taught that you could get up and go and do something about it.
Because if you did, you were going, you were antithetical.
You got outside your authority too.
Exactly. Yeah. You had to stay under that umbrella, even though Sean and I, our marriage was never like that.
Yeah.
I still felt an obligation that it
That's
had
how you were conditioned,
to
babe.
resemblance that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you break that? This is the way. There is no, you weren't given other options to have a different mindset. Like, this is it.
Right. I remember there's a picture of me taking there's a picture that I took of my son. He's got to be like 4 years old or something. And this is my eldest, and he's vacuuming. And I remember taking that, and I think I even posted it to social media. And this was right around the time that I was reading Mama Duggar's book, and how it's so important that kids at such a young age, they can do so much more than what society's like. Society lies to you. And how I was doing that. Now, granted, my son actually really enjoyed that. He enjoyed pushing the vacuum cleaner around. That was really fun for him. And then also I remember feeling slightly guilty because vacuuming is women's work. That wasn't something that a man did. And so I remember kind of thinking, oh, should I have him be doing vacuuming? But then it conflicted. It's
going to emasculate him.
Right. And then, but then it also conflicted. Exactly. Yeah. It conflicted though with how I also felt about women's rights and women empowerment and being a proud feminist. I mean, I quickly got over that, and, obviously like all my kids still vacuum. They don't want to. I mean, now that kid definitely does not want to do vacuuming. But it's interesting how this cult is so pervasive, and it seeps into every possible area of your life. Down to, as silly as it is, brushing your teeth, down to putting your makeup on, showering, all of that. Everything has to have order and routine, because God is a God of order.
And purpose.
And purpose, exactly. Okay, here's the part that you were looking forward to. Age and development delay in language and thinking. From 2002 to 2003, I was My age was 18 to 19 years old. My emotional age was 13 years old. It goes into why. Writing tone, childlike, simplistic, binary, good, bad, blessed, punished. Heavy use of mimicked religious language, praise, intercession. Displays magical thinking. If I honor my parents enough, God will fix them. Relationship to parents, idealized, performative, seeking earned approval. Mm-hmm. I met my husband at 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emotional age, 13 years old.
But I wonder what your spiritual maturity age was, because you know that was really locked in, and that's why you were so attractive to get married. You were pure marriage material.
100%. When you're 13 years old, just thinking about that, right? Being 13. No wonder they needed to keep us emotionally 13. And that is something that it's not just specific to the evangelical movement. They do it in other cults as well. But keeping specifically girls at the mental and emotional maturity of 13, because they know that as women get older, they have strength and they have agency. And women change the world. Women change the trajectory of society. So if men can keep that controlled and confined in a small space, hidden away from society, yep, then they can control the world and they can control the narrative. And anyway, 2005, I could go on. 2005 to 2007, my age was 21 to 23. My emotional age was 15 to 16 years old. A slight increase in personal narrative, I feel, is being used. Still unable to express anger or needs directly. Redirects discomfort into prayer. Marital strain addressed only through appeal to God, not communication. Meaning that I was opting to pray.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was it? Go to the throne, not the phone.
I've not heard that before. That is amazing.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go to the throne, not the phone. Wow.
Still no clear self-reflection or personal boundaries. Yeah. Fascinating. 2015, age 29. Emotional age, 17 to 18 years old. Now a mother, but emotionally unequipped to handle parenting challenges. That's 100% accurate. Expresses frustration with son, but feels shame for not knowing how to love her children. Still requests God to fix others, husband, child, finances, and purchasing equipment for business. Spiritual bypassing remains dominant mode of emotional regulation. Key insight. Despite a 13-year span, her language, emotional tone, and cognitive processing remain developmentally stuck in adolescence. She writes to God instead of thinking with herself. The emotional language is stunted, idealistic, and detached from embodied selfhood. Themes of powerless, abandonment, and shame. Buried beneath belief. She is not allowed to speak her trauma, only to spiritualize it. She doesn't ask why she feels abandoned, dismissed, unseen. She asks for the strength to ignore it. Help me not to worry about what others think. Increase my husband's income. Fix my self-image, food issues. Rather than seek answers, she seeks supernatural relief. This is not spiritual maturity. It's chronic disempowerment dressed up as holiness.
I think we can just drop the mic because boom. Yeah. It just
right.
I fawned a bit, but I was very much a resistance girl. I got a lot of resistance, a lot of just volatileness inside of me. And it's hearing this in the emotional maturity level, and yet it was like this high holiness. And it's just, I feel it in my core right now. You know, we were forced as young people to function and be viewed as adults. Meanwhile, our parents are failing to support our adolescence and that gradual maturity that we're supposed to have. But we've basically bypassed that within a year or two. So we're not emotionally maturing at all, but yet we're having to present as mature adults now. And all we have in our vernacular when we're presenting to everyone else is this spiritual maturity. We have everything memorized. We know all of the material. We are very versed in the our surroundings that we have. We're doing it for approval. We're doing it in hopes that God will hear us. And yet the child inside us is just simmering away, or not simmering away, but just like fizzling away. You know, where is that person? And I think that's where the confusion comes in. For me, the frustration, maybe for you, the more fawning of like, if I just keep on looking for this praise and I try my perfection, I mean, I definitely have perfection issues. You know, I just have to, if I present perfect enough, then everything will be okay. And that is such a stunted emotional response to things. But that was so powerful. I don't feel like I really want to say much about it because I feel like people should just rewind it and listen to that again.
Yeah, I remember
It's powerful.
hearing, and women in general are told that they're not allowed to speak up or speak out, and then if they do, they're being too sensitive. And I would argue that it's impossible for girls and women to be too sensitive inside of the evangelical movement because we were never taught how to feel. We can't be too sensitive. We don't know how to feel. We don't know what sensitive is.
We have
only know what
unregulated
sensitive
emotions.
Right. We only know what sensitive to the Holy Spirit is, right? And that's a softness. That's a lightness. That's a fill in the blank of emotion or feeling. It was always for something where we're not allowed to base anything on feeling. Everything is based on like the physical feeling our bodies felt, right? Like we would cry out to God when the music would coerce our bodies into feeling a certain way. But that's not feeling. We're not feeling anything.
It's interesting that you're saying that because I feel like our bodies, I think, again, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I feel like with what you're saying, our bodies got very used to translating. You know, and it wasn't accurate, obviously, but if I felt joy, then I had to, if my body felt joy or my spirit, I just like my soul was happy. You know, that day I just wanted to smile because I actually felt like genuinely smiling and it wasn't canned or fake. I also then had to take that and I had to translate it into, okay, but don't be too joyful because then, you know, people are going to think that you're arrogant or that, you know, you're taking the praise of God. Or if you're like, oh, I'm just so depressed, but you wouldn't know you were depressed. Like, I just feel heavy and I feel so sad. And I wish my parents had a better relationship or that my dad would stop spanking me or that we didn't have yelling in the home. But instead of going, wow, I feel sad and I'm going to acknowledge that I'm sad. No, you've got to ask God. You've got to, like, again, translate it as quickly as possible. Be like, nope, I gotta like integrate. And this has to be, God, please lift this weight from my soul so that I can always find joy in you. But then you find the joy again and then you can't be too joyful. So it's like just the goalpost always moved. We were always having to translate our emotions and our feelings. And it always had to be brought back to spirituality, no matter what.
Right. Training to see, just to spiritualize everything as a form of surrender. I wrote a Substack article based off of what I discovered in the June 27th, the one that you and I were talking about. And using what AI had pulled as the kind of like as the framework, but certainly rewording everything and pulling it back to like, this is where my mind frame was during that time. This has been a very impactful exercise for me because it validates what I already knew existed. And it puts language into these journals. Because again, these journals don't tell me what I ate that day, what I did that day, who I saw that day. I have no idea in most of these what is actually going on in my life. All I know is the desperation that I felt. All I know is, wow, that's a girl that could use a therapist and could use a friend. But she was isolated, abandoned, alone, and begging God to fix all of that.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't given the tools or the agency to be able to do that herself.
And for so much of it, she was too young to be able to do that anyway. So where were the parents that were supposed to really make sure that her mental health and her well-being, aside from her spiritual growth, where was that? You know, and I know we say hurt people, and we realize that our parents and that the generation of our parents went through a lot of painful things and they've got their own issues. I totally understand that. I give space for the fact that our parents are more than likely very hurt people in and of themselves that have also been denied the help they need. But when we're looking back at our own childhoods and the fact that no one was paying attention, and yet we were around so many people. We weren't around just our parents. We were around other adults. We were at Sunday school. We were going to church. We were in youth groups. We were with so many other people that should have picked up on this. But because everybody in our community groups were focused on your spirituality and your purity is all that matters, you're not ever going to find the help you need. And yeah, all you're going to do is continue to cry and suffer.
Yeah. I think what I hear you saying is it may explain their behavior, but it doesn't excuse it.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
But
to say like, where were they? It's like, well, I mean, we know why they weren't present or why even when they were, we still felt abandoned, because that the emotional maturity should be happening at a more steady pace than yours. And I'm sure mine, I mean, after you've done this beautiful experiment of yours, I definitely am going to be doing it. I'm going to be putting all of my journal entries into the computer, and then I'm going to start having a conversation with ChatGPT, because I think it's going to be really fascinating to see these parallels. And I'm sure that people listening right now too are like, wow, I know prayer journals, I've done them a ton, and this makes a whole lot of sense. The enlightenment that this is bringing. And I'm sorry for the abandonment that you have felt, that I have felt, that so many of us have felt, because it's not just in one area, it's in so many, whether people are still believers or not. Like, I felt fully abandoned by God. I never got my magical thinking never manifested into magical answers. Only when I started to actually take care of myself and say enough is enough and put up the boundaries that I started to actually feel a lot better and to actually feel whole, as I started to allow these parts of myself that had stayed segregated. I had allowed them to actually integrate, so that I can have physical feelings, body feelings, emotions, thoughts of my own, or being able to talk to a friend like you and digest all of these types of things, because there is a kindredness that we have, and a similarity of upbringing and vernacular, that sometimes even when we sit and talk, we'll say, like, we'll just be like, blah, blah, I know that was really Christian-y, or blah, 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 that was like really spiritually, but you know what I'm saying, right? You know, and so it's nice to have this community that where you understand each other and the pain that we've gone through, but the enlightenment, I think, for any individual person to do what you've done. Like, I've never heard of anyone doing this before, and I'm not on the internet a lot, so maybe people have, but I think this is just brilliant what you've done.
Yeah, thank you. It gives beautiful insight. There's a lot of people who have burned their journals or thrown them away, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that, like, my prayer journal is your prayer journal. My prayer journal is somebody that I've never even met. They're all the same. It's all the same words.
Here's my original one.
Yeah, there's your.
My original,
there's
like,
no
it even had a lock on it.
Yeah. Okay, I have the Precious
It never
Moments
worked.
one.
You can literally jiggle it and it will just open.
Ooh, I bet you it's MA. All of them were MA. All of the locks were MA.
I just know if I jiggle it right, I can get it to unlock.
You can also just, like, rip the thing off.
So private. So private.
Yeah. I think what this does, because for those who can't afford a therapist, you can, there's a lot of tools that you can utilize for sure. But for those who can, taking this language and presenting it to your therapist and saying, I want to start really digging into this. Where is this pervasive in my life right now? Because this is violent. This is violating how we were forced to grow up, like what we were forced to grow up in. We didn't have a childhood. I think, how did you frame it the other day? Because I think that it was well said. That our childhood was stolen. You're like, shoot, what? Like, our childhood was stolen from us. And you said something about
it was
violence.
Denied us. It was denied us. Yes, like, it was. I feel like it was emotionally the violence of how it was ripped away from us. You know, that we were denied the opportunity to even experience or explore childhood, because it went from intense innocence. If you're a female, I think more so, but like this intense innocence to boom, now you have to start getting ready for marriage, and there's going to be this man that's going to come along, and da 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 da. You cannot play with toys. You cannot really laugh and be too happy, but definitely smile, shiny, happy people kind of person. You know, do these things that are all forward presenting, but then also don't have emotions, but also don't have infatuations. Leave it all up to God. But then also, you know, keep aligning yourself so you can be the best wife possible. You absolutely are denied your formative years. You are denied your maturity. It is robbed. It's robbed from you. Absolutely. Yes. I think that's the word I used. I was like, our childhoods were robbed from us, under the guise of, even for parents that were well-meaning, under the guise of, this is what is best for you spiritually. And now through, you know, what you've done with the IA and stuff, you know, it's basically saying the emotional maturity was not there. So even our parents, even the best ones that hoped the best for what they were doing and thought it was all for the best for their children, were emotionally stunting their children, but believed that they were not, because we were so forward presenting with our spiritual greatness. And they were also hoodwinked to believing, look how mature my child is. No, they're just conditioned and indoctrinated, and we've become mimicking parrots to the things we see around us, because we are also conditioned to need your praise in order to get your love.
Yeah. Yep. Very well said. I definitely want to continue doing this, because there are
absolutely
themes that I know have not been extracted yet, especially going into my 30s. And I think it would be fascinating to, because I believe, I'm going to finish that thought with pulling back just a second. I had started actively deconstructing when my parents left in 2002. And it was such a slow process that it wasn't until my 30s, mid 30s ish, that I started really questioning. Like, I am being treated this way. This is not healthy. This is not helpful. Why am I still here? And really asking myself, like, why do I still go to church? I must be one of the really righteous people, really living out through like long suffering. And now I can see that was I think that was the development of cognitive dissonance, because we weren't allowed, we couldn't have had cognitive dissonance because you have to know that there's a right and a wrong, right? Like you have to know that. I don't think that it's possible for people like us to have had cognitive dissonance. Now I think it would be, because if we were to go back into that space, we would definitely know. God, yeah. And we would have to have that dissonance. But I just think that it really is. It's kind of like a Field of Dreams thing. Like you know, right. But like you walk over the rocks and then I didn't turn into an old male doctor, but like,
darn it.
Yeah, exactly. But like you walk over that line. You can't go back. Yeah. Once you have walked over that line,
your eyes have
done.
Been opened. Like you are now fully aware. I think sometimes with the cognitive dissonance too, and this is just again my own feelings and opinions about it, but I think too, like a lot of people with cognitive dissonance, especially with spirituality, I think like they don't fully understand the black and white of it all, but there's that little instinctual feeling that they get that maybe they should start asking questions, but they're too afraid to. And so then they make the choice, I'm going to stay over here, even though I know something doesn't quite feel right, because that fear of the unknown is so much greater than their curiosity and need to shift everything else. I mean, it's Jenga. You start pulling one of those bars from the bottom and the whole thing will crumble. And I think that's why a lot of people want to just stay in their safety bubble with their community. And I don't judge it, but I feel sad for people that feel they have to stay there, because I think you're a perfect example with everything that you've talked about today of like, the longer you stay in this, the more entrenched you become, and you deny yourself a well-rounded, fully integrated self to live the biggest life you can. I think as bold and brave and loud as Christians can be, they're some of the smallest life, least well-rounded, worldly in just the globe sense. And they stay so confined. And life is so big out there for us to explore. And I'm so glad I just said, you know what? Because I'm more the fight girl. I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I don't even know what's going to happen to me out there. But I can't. I know I can't do this. But I don't know that I wasn't like tossing my faith out the window. I just knew that I could not do whatever that was anymore, because it was suffocating me. It was hurting. I hurt so badly. I was so enraged. I had no joy, and I was an imposter just because I didn't believe anything that was going on anymore. And God was not coming to help or save, or he did nothing. So I had to go and do it myself. Thank you, Sky Daddy. But I definitely was like, guess who's actually my personal Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? Lindsay. She decided it's time to go and do something else, and of course I'm being, sarcastic, but like I had to become the hero in my own story to save me and decide that I wanted to try to mature and grow and not be afraid of the others, where they're like, others may, you cannot. in the world, but not of the world. Like you said, it reminds when you were saying about the glass pane and the mirror, you know, it's like to always be allowed, or not even allowed, but we had no choice. We live in society. You go to Walmart, you see cute shorts, you see bathing suits, you see what everyone else in the world is wearing. You hear them talking about how they went to a theme park or how like they went to a slumber party, and you just sit in this like, I have nothing that makes me happy. And yet I have to go home and live in this kind of like cage of suffocation to continue to force myself to not be curious, to not ask questions, to not explore. Stay confined, Lindsay. And look at what that did to us and in your journals and what this is saying with the CPSD and all this repression. You know, it just enrages me. But I'm going to tell people too, I'm just going to shamelessly self-promote Stephanie. You guys need to read the Substack about that first section of the first journal thing that she did with ChatGPT AI. Because holy crap. I mean, we talked for like several hours, and I felt like my brain felt so noodly afterwards. Like I was just like, like some of the insights that she gleaned from AI were, I mean, just top notch. So I'm just going to say, go out there and read that Substack because it is absolutely worth it.
Yeah, thank you.
You didn't pay me to say that.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
I'll send her a Venmo later.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. It has changed the way that I look at my upbringing. It's given language, and I've always tried to tell people, I try very hard to be a language bridge. So I'm talking about my upbringing. I'm bringing people onto my podcast. I'm writing. I'm trying very, very hard to give people language they need to take to their therapist to work on their own healing. Because I am not a licensed therapist. I am just an expert on how I grew up. I would fair to say that I believe you and I are both experts on the evangelical movement easily. And we're both experts in religious trauma syndrome because we live through it, but we're not experts on the multiple modalities to heal from it.
Yeah.
And so if somebody has a question about religious trauma syndrome, I can answer it as it pertains to my life, but I can't answer it as it pertains to somebody healing. I can only say, here are the tools that I have, that I have worked on for my own self, but like, you're going to need to take those to somebody and work that out. Go read a book.
And everybody's healing journey is theirs to take. You know, I think, especially after Shiny Happy People, and though I loved everybody that was reaching out, there were a lot of people that I felt were looking to me to give them answers. Well, how did you do this? How did you do that? And though I understand, because it is a lot and you are in the dark, but the internet's an amazing place actually to be able to get the help and seek the help you need.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the end of the day, regardless, like even for our own parents who we are estranged from, you know, their journeys are theirs alone. And though I may be their child, my journey is also mine at this point as a grown up woman. And even my journey is separate from my husband's journey. We are all individuals on this planet. We choose to enter into relationships with each other, to have friends like you and I are. But at the end of the day, like, we can share, and I can tough love you and you can, you know, tough love me back. But I also can't like sit next to you and be like, okay, here's how you're going to heal, Stephanie. Like it's all a journey on your own. And so for anyone that's listening, I think it's important to realize that you want to have a community of people that you can talk to, but be aware that like therapy is not as scary as you think it is. We're afraid to be vulnerable. But I think that even just this step, even if you just typed in your feelings into ChatGPT and said, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now, because you don't have prayer journals or weird diaries from, you know, your fundy past, like just ask questions. And, you know, this recently we did this in my household. We were asking a few questions, and I thought it was interesting because it literally does say, I am not a licensed therapist, but here are some insights I have to share with you. And then at the very end, it will reiterate it yet again. It sounds like you could benefit from a lifestyle coach, or it sounds like maybe you could seek out this in your community. And so I do like that it gives advice, but it's not going to replace a therapist or a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. But it is valuable, like you said, as like even just a jumping off point with your therapist to be able to say, look, this is connecting and this makes so much sense to me. And now this is how I want to go down this journey because this is meaty. And you're not just kind of in like a drolling talk therapy, if you will, because sometimes it can be like that.
Yeah. But, and you can't replace connection. And I think that's where what you were talking about there too. Mm-hmm. There's something profound and wonderful about real authentic connection, and that's not something that we had in church. That's something that we fantasized about having. That's something we idealized, but we didn't have it, because if we did, when we left, those connections and friendships would have come with us, and they didn't. They stayed there because they weren't real.
They always stay there.
I was listening to something yesterday, and I think we could probably end with this. It was a former Republican congressman who left. It's Adam Kinzinger. He's the one, so there was. Do you know who Adam Kinzinger is? For those people who do not know who he is, when January 6th happened, he spoke out wildly against Trump. I still have some grievances with him because I feel like he hasn't done an adequate enough job to say, hey, actually, I participated very much in this and I helped make this. However, he is also actively speaking out against it. So it's like, it's a tough tension point to hold, right? But he had somebody on his, I don't know if it's like a podcast. I know this was on Substack yesterday. And this guy was one of the head people in MAGA. Mm-hmm. And then he left. And he talks about his foundation that he started, not a foundation, it's a website where he's helping people leave MAGA. Mm. What's fascinating is they called it a community. MAGA is a community. People are searching for community. They've been disenfranchised and all this stuff. And I'm screaming into the void, right? I'm like, it's a cult. It is a cult.
Dressed up as community.
Right. And I think that people don't want to define it as a cult because MAGA has a head. And that head is the enmeshment of Trump and Jesus. So if you were to call MAGA a cult, then you have to also call the evangelical movement, which they are followers of, you have to acknowledge that that's a cult too.
I think it's easy for the two of them. I mean, I think the core to it is that the mindsets, stay very similar, that they want to be told what to do. They want the hope. This person, this magical thinking, this person is going to fix it, because they don't live in a reality of the cause and effect or a lifelong proof of someone's character. And we see, like, when I look at people that fully believe in Trump to save America, which I don't think it needs saving. It needs change, but I don't think it needs saving. But then you look at how a lot of people who are Christians in church will do the same with a pastor, and then they fall into these sexual misconduct issues, and then everyone stays silent. The cognitive dissonance, they know it's wrong, but you know what? We did it God's way. Then you see them completely dismissing Trump's sexual issues. And it just, that's even just on a basic level one, but those are, they've learned to bypass so much in their lives because of their own they've subjected themselves to the conditioning, to the indoctrination. And you sit in it long enough, no matter what it is, It doesn't have to be spiritual. It can be any practice that it can start to put you into a space where it becomes your routine and you never ask another question about it. Well, that's just what I do. Well, that's not an excuse to not be a good person. You need to question at all times. I question myself constantly, probably for other trauma reasons, but I do. I question all the time, like, what am I doing? Why am I, what is the purpose behind what I'm doing? I want what I do to matter. And I also want to make sure that I'm in alignment with the betterment of the world, with the betterment of my friends, with, whether that's an attitude check on my end or checking in saying, hey, are you okay? And when you come into these groups like MAGA, like Christian nationalism, like evangelicals, fundamentalists, et cetera, freaking et cetera, I think the real core is that people are so conditioned to their behaviors and their thought processes, and they are guising it under spiritual maturity. And that, with what you've just said with AI, that and so you cannot tell them they are wrong. The more you do, the deeper they dig in. I mean, I've seen it with my parents. I've seen it with Bill Gothard. I have seen it with so many of these religious leaders. And we are now seeing it on our political stage as well in like the grossest of ways. Doesn't matter all the evil and the horrible that's going on. We don't care. They're like zombies. We believe. We just believe. And you know what? If he's not perfect, because everyone's fallible, if he's not perfect, well, we'll just pray to God, but it'll work out. He means the best for us.
Right.
Meanwhile, this bill literally just passed today. The big, beautiful bill. It literally just passed.
Yep.
And I think that these culty followers are in for a really rude awakening. And though it may be hard for some of us who have been out of the Kool-Aid for a while to have compassion for what's about to, the wool coming off their eyes, because it's going to impact them in ways they have refused to hear. I don't know what the world's going to look like, a year from now. But I think my hope is that we're able to, in these processes and in the exercise that you just did, that it will help people to realize that they can gain more insight on themselves. To be able to open up to, hey, yeah, no, maybe this was wrong. And like Tia Levine said in the documentary, which is one of my favorite quotes, like, the universe will catch you. Like, take that first step and the universe will catch you. Like, I am here. You are here. And for those who decide to finally give up some of their spiritual arrogance, because that's what it's going to take, we are here. This is why you have this podcast.
Yeah. And it's
support them and have community.
Right. And always be careful. Who, I don't like to use the word align, but in this case, I think it's appropriate, but who you align yourself with. I've seen a lot of very suspect people that are in the deconstruction space, are in the evangelical space. And they're really just people that either lacked power and are seeking it now, or people that held immense amount of power and are just doing the same spiritual and emotional grift on the other side.
Repackaged it. They just repackaged it. Yeah.
So in any place, there can be people that are harmful and there can be people that are toxic. There are people that can be toxic to the masses, and then there are people that it can just be toxic for you. And just because they're not great for you doesn't mean they're bad for others.
Exactly.
I think I can leave with this. There's a photo of me. I posted it a couple years ago on social media, and my family and I, we really like to hike, and we hiked to a place in Mount Rainier National Park where I'm like nose to nose with the top half of Mount Rainier. It's beautiful. It's just easily one of my top favorite places. And I sat there, and the pictures of me just looking out at this beautiful, and it's actually Mount Tahoma for locals here. That's what the indigenous tribe named her. And I'm looking at her, And I put on the caption that for my whole life, I was told that I had to pray that this mountain moved. And so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I fasted and I sobbed and I wept and I prayed. Until the day that I realized I was capable of standing on top of it.
There you go.
And we are. We're capable of standing on top of or climbing over it. We can conquer mountains. We don't need to pray that they leave. We don't need to pray that they move. We realize that we have the strength to stand on top of them.
And it's fulfilling. It's such a self-fulfillment. Yes. You feel so powerful and so confident and so sure of yourself when you actually decide to walk out into the storm and weather it instead of hide and pray for it to go away.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That analogy with the mountain is amazing. I love that.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me. We always have so much fun.
I know. I'm looking at
just
the clock
everybody else misses it. Oh my
gosh. I know.
No one else gets to enjoy all the fun conversations we have for hours on end.
It's so true. When I call you or you call me, I'm sure you're looking at the phone. You're like, but do I have 3 hours?
Yeah.
What it's gonna be.
Sometimes, yes. But we've gotten a lot better lately where I'm like, hey, I got about 20 minutes and I got a jet. And we're like, okay, fine.
Yep.
We'll do 3 hours in 2 days.
Exactly. We'll do little 20-minute increments here and there.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
I am very grateful for you. I met you just a couple years ago. Yep. I won't forget that either. I remember sitting on my bed talking to you and thinking, I think we're going to be friends for a really long time. And I didn't tell you that. That would be weird. But I just remember thinking, gosh, I have so much in common with this person. And I'm excited to have her on my podcast. And then here we are. So I appreciate you very much.
I think.
I know.
Yeah. Yep.
I know.
Here we are.
Yep. Thanks for holding my feet to the fire when I need it, and giving me some.
Well, we all need it,
truth.
don't we? Sometimes we just need that. Yeah, we need a little kick in the tush.
Yeah.
I have friends that do it to me a lot, so I know how it feels, but I also know how it changes me. So
yeah,
there we are.
And thank you for trusting me with things you're going through, and I appreciate you. You're fantastic.
Aww.
I love you,
and
and
so are you.
Have a great rest of the day. And thank you everybody for listening. Please, her socials are going to be linked. Go follow her because she's so fun. She is oh my God, she's a makeup artist. She does hair in LA on people that are famous. Like her portfolio blows me away. And I'm constantly asking her for advice on hair, makeup, skincare.
We have beauty days
everything.
Constantly.
100%. So please go check her out. Thank you again. And I love you and have a great rest of the day.
Love. Alrighty,
All
you
right.
too.
All right. Bye.